Hello, and welcome to Julia and Friends Life of Love. That's a podcast where we share the magic of living. And just, I'm really excited to bring you my special guest today, Susie Hayes. She is a registered psychotherapist, a certified sex therapist, a certified life coach, and a certified business coach. She holds 2 certifications in hypnosis and a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. She also has several certifications in energy psychology, including Reiki, Theta healing, and resonance alchemy. So please welcome. Thanks for being here, Susie Hayes.
It is a delight, Julie. Thank you so much for having me here today.
You're welcome. And I did want to add that you have a book that's called Freed from Stuck. And is that available right now?
I do. Yes, it's actually been out for several years, and it's available both on my website and, of course, on Amazon.
Which your website is susiehayesnow.com?
Yes, or people can just put in freedfromstuck.com, and that will take them there as well.
Great. Well, thank you. I wanted to make sure that we talked about that because I was on your website and it just has a great resource and little surveys and it's very interactive and lovely. So I wanted everyone to have that resource that they can continue to get to know you and, seek out anything that you might offer because I was just reading your resume. You've been in the field of psychiatric care, helping and healing for quite some time with all these certifications. And I just love that. So did you always know you were going to be a helper, like from the moment you started school or had to decide on a career?
I originally, my undergraduate work was actually in special education. I was looking at going into education. And then when I got to my graduate studies, I actually was completing my master's in education. And then I wound up in my own therapeutic experience and found it to be so rewarding and so transformative that I decided to stay around and get an additional master's in counseling. And that changed the trajectory basically of my work from education to counseling, though I still do a lot of education in terms of my writing and my speaking, and the fields have integrated very well. But yeah, I think I always knew that I wanted to do something purposeful and that I enjoyed the learning process and the growth process. So I've always been drawn to that, along with an element of creativity. I love that as well, and curiosity. So those are all, pretty core values for me in terms of what brings me joy to my life. And so consequently, my work for me has been very, very rewarding for decades, and I really enjoy what I do.
I can see your curiosity in all the branches of your service. And so, yeah, it just took me on a little path when I was following your degrees and your different, you don't always see someone who's a counselor be certified in Reiki, for instance. And were your extra certifications like personally motivated, or how did you go in these other directions away from like a traditional counselor, these other healing modalities?
Well, I've always been a spiritual seeker. I grew up in a traditional church, and but my father was amazing in that he gave me incredible support and encouragement to always ask questions. Always ask questions. And so my curiosity has taken me into any number of adventures of exploring different avenues, both psychologically, theologically, spiritually, energetically. And I am just an avid learner and student of life, and it brings me great satisfaction. So if something catches my interest, I call it following the breadcrumbs. And because I'm such a tenacious student and I love to learn, I will, once I get into something, I dive in and I want to, learn everything I can about something. So it's just been a part of my ongoing growth experience for me, which is not really separated personally or professionally. It really is just part of my own internal integration.
Do you find that when you go down those, you pick up the breadcrumbs or go down, I call them rabbit holes, and I just it's all I read the books, I listen to podcasts, that subject gets my 200% attention, and then all of a sudden, like, people show up that need that information, and I was wondering, does that happen for you? Did you get this training that all of a sudden you're those people that need that are drawn to you? Have you noticed that synchronicity?
I have noticed that synchronicity, and I notice it on a daily basis. It's very interesting to me always that I can be uh, reading a book and it has caught my interest, and then I am coaching or counseling someone, and the information that I just read in that book is applicable to what's going on. Now, I don't know if that's a synchronicity or if just unconsciously how we connect in with each other, but I find that to happen very frequently. And I just think that's going with the flow and trusting our intuition. And I really believe that there is a force of love in the universe that is guiding us collectively toward growth and expansion and healing. And so I believe that we're attracted to those people and those individuals and those experiences that are designed to help us grow. And likewise, people are drawn to us in the same way. Sometimes that's in a negative sense, right? Where we get stuck, or we have challenges or blocks or obstacles or difficult situations or losses that are really there, and we have a choice as to whether or not we're going to allow ourselves to grow through those. But I do believe that there is an intelligence and a wisdom that guides us in our lives, and particularly for those who are of us who are interested in that and attuned to that. I think we magnetize all kinds of amazing experiences to our lives.
I couldn't agree more. And I love what you said. You said, grow with it. Not just go with it, grow with it. You could just
Yeah,
unpack that phrase for 10 minutes. I mean, you're entering
that
your
was pretty good,
roots.
wasn't it?
Yes, I'm just like, we got Mother Gaia involved. We're putting our roots into the ground. You're branching out. You're dealing. Trees get blown by the wind and they just adjust. And plants, and
Yes.
I always go to trees because trees are my thing. But anything that grows has to, sort of go with the flow. And so I love that perspective of grow with it. I'm going to put that in the show highlights there.
All right. I love it. Thank you.
That's a
Yeah,
great one.
that really is true. And if we don't understand the challenges of life as being part of our growth, then we're much more vulnerable to fear. And when we're vulnerable in that way, we really limit the quality of our life. And if we can see that we are here to grow and expand, even at those times when we're challenged, it allows us to be with those experiences with minimal suffering. And I'm not diminishing anyone's pain or trauma or tragedy or loss. Life can be really, really difficult. And because life can be, anything that we can do to diminish our suffering is really important.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. And, that's what I started saying more recently is, I know that God doesn't give me anything more than I can handle. And so I say, God, I know that I can handle this because it's in my field. And I'll acknowledge just it really stinks and that I'm struggling, and I acknowledge it, but then I just trust that, it'll work out, and just that thought of saying, or that presence of being like, God, I know that I can do this. I can get through this. And then just show me what I need. Bring to me the help I need. Bring to me the state of mind. And then like resources like yours show up, and it's like, there's a lot of tools to help minimize our suffering, and that is huge. And the breadcrumbs aren't just positive things, they're negative things that we have to, some people call it karma. They call it karma. Whatever it is, that thing, that hurdle you have to jump over has shown up for a reason. So that's your growth, right? Mm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I think you speak to what is so important in this journey is our freedom to be authentic, our freedom to be able to be afraid and to struggle and to say it sucks
Mm-hmm.
and to fight and resist if that's where we're at. And it's not easy, it's not linear, it's not meant to be. Life can sometimes be really messy. And our task is really to find our way through as best we can. And uh, when we really begin to cultivate the internal resources that we've been given to move forward in our life, life is better. And when we allow ourselves to receive the external support and resources that are there as well, we're not meant to live in isolation, and we're not designed to figure out things on our own. We're not meant to. We're meant to live in relationships, and that's the good news. Bad news is that relationships can be satisfying. They can also be challenging, but that's what we're about as human beings.
Yeah, and respecting where you are so much that you say, I will not tolerate this. This doesn't work for me.
Absolutely, setting boundaries sometimes is can be the best way in which we um, care for ourselves. Boundaries are really important, and in fact, I was reading something the other day that healers and caregivers and teachers who are the most effective, actually, the research has found, and I believe it was Brene Brown that stated this. She found that those people who were the most effective actually also set the best boundaries, which I thought was really interesting because they understood that they needed to have self care and they needed to be able to organize their life in such a way that they could conserve their energy. And I thought that was a really interesting piece of research of how important boundaries really are for us.
It's beautiful because to me, once you establish your boundaries, your self care, it frees up the other person in the relationship to say, well, this is what I need too. That might not have even come up. We have this idea that we're in a relationship, whether it's your marriage or friendships, and your best friend's supposed to be everything to you. You're my best friend, or my husband's supposed to be this wonderful, perfect, dancing in the kitchen relationship, and it's not always that way. And sometimes just being raw and vulnerable and saying, this doesn't work for me, and they'd be like, well, this doesn't work for me either, and so then you can get to a solution, right? Like then you can get to a compromise, or you can say, well, it's not working at all, and then you free yourself up, right? Like, but until you start the conversation, you're just living in a quagmire. You become a zombie if you can't get through and have your self-care, because you become numb. And I love that you brought up relationships, because I wanted to ask you about your experience being a sex therapist. And to me, that part of people's lives isn't like in this box. You don't like enter the bedroom or an intimate space isolated from everything else. It's part of everything: your health, your mental state, your relationship. You can't, I mean, I guess people can have sex and have a release, but that bond, the intimacy, that everybody wants to be seen, but nobody wants to be used. Everyone wants to be seen. Um, that doesn't happen in isolation. It's part of a whole dynamic. But and I just wanted to ask you about that in your experience as being a sex therapist, because I've never gotten to ask a certified sex therapist any questions about the intimacy and that kind of thing. So what could you share? I'm very excited to hear.
There are probably many things that I could touch on in that, but I think in terms of what you're referring to, that our sexuality is so foundational to who we are. And um, seldom are sexual issues about functionality. That can certainly be a piece of the experience, but more often than not, when people are having challenges sexually, it has more to do with what's going on either in terms of their own internal dynamic or the dynamic with their partner. And so often when people come to see me and they're having an issue, what really begins to emerge are experiences of anxiety, anger, disappointment, frustration, isolation, not feeling heard or understood, feeling that their partner is not attuned to them or sensitive to them, not just physically, but emotionally and relationally. And so, very often, once you attend to where those emotional wounds or fears are, um, the the sexual experience begins to emerge out of a different place. It's no longer being blocked by those fearful or painful emotions. And so intimacy, real intimacy is restored or cultivated. Sometimes people haven't even really cultivated that. But as it's being cultivated and healed, then people find that the sexual experience comes for them much more easily and much more naturally. And they can explore that and cultivate that in ways sometimes that they didn't feel the freedom or the permission to explore before. And so the level of satisfaction, emotionally and physically, is so much better once we attend to the wounds that are standing in the way of the intimacy in the relationship.
Mm. So there, that's again self care. You're you're finding where the wounds are, exploring, and you don't really think about healing wounds when you consider intimacy or a sexual relationship. You think about pleasure, right? But it's that pleasure pain principle, I guess. Like if you're not scared about what's going to happen, then you might not be growing, right? Like it's being really vulnerable, like the whole thing. And if you don't feel
It is,
vulnerable, you might not be totally present with everything that's going
yes.
on.
And in order to be vulnerable and be fully present, you have to feel safe and you have to trust your partner. And so, if there has been anything that's been going on in the relationship or anything going on in your life in which you're not feeling safe, it can impact you in terms of showing up at those moments of physical intimacy and not being able to relax into that and to trust that natural physiological process that brings us the pleasure. And so the restoration or the cultivation of trust is really, really important in the relationship.
Mhm. So that would be the number one thing you try to explore with somebody that came to you is how's the trust? Are you feeling secure and safe everywhere, like your whole world? How is the whole thing?
Yes,
Yeah.
and the experience of sexual intimacy is really there for us to go to as an oasis. That's a place where we go for nurturance and pleasure and satisfaction and relaxation. So we we want to be able to anticipate that as being that kind of experience. So if there is anything that has happen that causes that to not be in that way, then it makes it much more difficult to be able to enter into that space with someone and really enjoy it in the way that we can.
That I could unpack that. So, like, if somebody could just define what that relaxation, that connection, what would be the ideal? Like, I mean, if they, I think that most people don't even think about those layers. You list, I think it was 5 different things you just listed about that time, that special time that you have with your person, and like what that means to you. And then if your partner isn't showing up in that way, or you're not feeling that situation, then it's a great place to start. Like, because sometimes you just know there's something wrong, but you can't, you just know you're not okay with it, right? Like, you just know that you're not feeling all that honored, or you're not feeling all that seen. um, so it's a great place to
Yes.
start.
Well, it's our sexuality is such an interesting place in terms of our own growth, our own personal growth, and our relational growth. And it's really important that in that setting, which is so vulnerable, that we can appreciate that our bodies are designed to protect us. Our nervous system and our brain is designed to protect us. So anything that registers physiologically as not feeling safe will activate the alert system, will activate the nervous system. And when we feel that, it means that it's in some way we're not feeling comfortable, we're not feeling safe. So to be able to attune to our body and really say, what is it about this experience that's going on for me? Does it have to do with something that I'm feeling inside myself? Does it have to do with some kind of experience, some kind of belief, something in my value system? Is it something inside of me? Or is it something that is dynamic in relationship with my partner, that it has to do with something that I need differently, some unmet need or some desire that I have in terms of what I know would feel pleasurable in my body? And then being able to communicate that as we feel safe, and respecting that our bodies are signaling us in terms of what's going on for us. And so for us to stay attuned to that and listen to what our bodies are telling us is really, really essential to be able to relax and to feel comfortable and to be receptive and engaged.
Yeah, I listened to a TED talk about betrayal, and that there's actual steps of overcoming betrayal. It's a betrayal syndrome. Um, and I hadn't I that was new to me. I hadn't heard about, you hear about the stages of death, or the stages of um, alcoholism, or whatever. There's stages, but they identified stages of betrayal. And sometimes betrayal is just, you lost trust, or maybe you just needed to work through something, and all you can do is communicate, right? Like you said, you have to feel where you are and communicate that with your partner. And there's so many different layers of where lack could come from. I don't want to say lack, but growth could come from in a relationship. And just unpacking those things. There's a lot of content online that makes you feel like, there's people and situations that seem so free and happy, but it's a production, right? And so we have to deal with our lives as they are. And these productions are available for free, and every curious little child can see them. And that's part of what I would like to educate people, is that that's not true intimacy. That's a production. And we need to honor each other and honor our bodies. We're not on a movie set. We're people. We're simple people.
We are, and your point is well taken. It doesn't really matter if it's pornography or a Hallmark movie.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them are real. And that is part of, I think, the challenge that we face where we are in our culture is that there is this idealization of how we are being presented with images and how we're supposed to be, or we think we're supposed to be. And in reality, being in our own bodies and experiencing our own bodies and experiencing the body of our partner is not, as you say, like a production. And so to be able to be present with the strengths and the flaws and the beauty and the warts of our human experiences and our human bodies is so important, to be able to see that that's really an opportunity to experience love as we are,
Yes,
and
yes,
that there's a
yes.
relief in that.
Mm-hmm. And to
There's a
me,
relief in
it's,
that. It's like,
yes,
oh, okay, I don't have to be perfect.
right.
I can be who I am, and I'm still very worthy of
Mhm.
love and pleasure and enjoyment and companionship. Yeah,
And
that's very
compassion,
important.
like like you said on your website, we deserve happiness. We're beings that, we don't want to be in pain. We want to be in joy and bliss. And so that unconditional love, like, it doesn't matter. I always tease my husband, he has like hair on his shoulder. And it's just like so precious to me because it's like built-in shoulder pads. And it's like, but
But do you see
like
how?
you could say you need to
But do you see
wax or
how?
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is such a beautiful example of what it's like when you really love someone and you see them through the eyes of love.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different, because something that someone else might be critical of, you find endearing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a beautiful example of how love really broadens our ability to enjoy other human beings. It's like when we can say, none of us are perfect, and we're all doing the best we can to be who we are today, to show up as the best we can today. And when we can embrace that, and honestly, not all days, every day do I embrace that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people make me crazy, and I could be critical and impatient. I can even be snarky, sometimes unkind, right? Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
human. But I think to the best of our ability, when we really seek to see ourselves and see others through the eyes of love, it is a transformative experience
Mm.
and
I
a
agree.
freeing experience.
I agree. I agree. It reminds me of that movie Shallow Hal,
Mm.
where he gets Tony Robbins he is a cameo in that movie, and it just cracks me up. So he's attracted to these people, but he's attracted to their loving, beautiful souls. And if we could all recognize each other as divine beings with these, our souls are forever. And the whole, lately, to me, the biggest like amazing curiosity to me is that we all could be linked like as star families, and we reincarnate according to our planetary, like our galactic astrology. To me, that's blowing my mind, because when I pulled up my galactic astrology, like my physical description fits what planetary like system that my my astrology says I'm from. So I mean, I was just like, holy cow, like if we're all linked like in the universe according to the stars, that just lights me up. And like anyone around us, like we could be related like at a galactic level, not just as humans. And it just, that just makes it so magical. And I love exploring and having these conversations about love like this with you, because it just makes me feel so connected to the mystery and curiosity, and it just lights me up about our existence here and what we're all here to help each other, evolve to, or whatever breadcrumbs we're supposed to leave for each other is just blows my mind when I think about my life in that perspective. So if somebody cuts me off in traffic, I'm like, I'm not supposed to get there as fast as I thought I was. Like, there could be an accident, right? Like, everything's karmically or mystically connected. And if you look at things that way, it's not like you're surrendering. You still have intention, you still have goals, but like, it might not happen the way you think, because that's not the best way or the most optimal. So you have to just sort of, like you said, adjust and grow with it. Oh, I just adore this conversation with you. I didn't realize we're going to talk so much about love, but it's just it really did blossom. Like you said, we're going to just take our conversation. So that's the best advice for somebody in the bedroom, is just, find your unconditional love. Come with your relationship with that idea and that grace, that this person wants to spend time with you, and you get these precious moments, and make them precious, right? Like, and if it can't be precious, be honest about why it's not feeling like a precious moment to you. And maybe you have a vocabulary, like, do you want to have a precious moment? Like, would that be a great way to talk to your lover? Like, are you ready for a precious moment? Like,
if they identify with experiencing it as a precious moment.
mm-hmm.
We all have different ways in which we describe those things that are of value to us. And precious is a term that we as women particularly identify with.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be interesting to ask maybe your husband how he identifies those times. You
Mm.
say this is a precious time. It'd be interesting to ask him as a man, does he see it as precious?
Uh-huh.
And I'm not
That's a great
I don't
question.
want to get into I don't want to get into, the gender stuff, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it is a certain way in which we have perspective around sexuality. I'm just curious. It'd be interesting to find out, how would a man describe a positive sexual experience in terms of I don't recall any men that I've worked with ever describing it as precious.
Mm-hmm. But if you're,
So
as a woman, as a divine feminine, you say, I'm willing to enter precious with you. That's
yes,
how
precious
you
or cherished.
like.
Yeah, we would use terms like
Mm-hmm.
precious or cherished.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, I think the men that I have worked with, tend to describe it more in terms of satisfaction, closeness, relaxation, um, pleasure. And for them, that's an important value. They want to be able to be with a woman and to experience pleasure, that and that they feel uh, that they trust her, that she trusts them, and that it has been satisfying for both of them. That is really how men often will communicate about their sexual experience. But it'd be interesting to see if your audience, what they might say about that as well, in
Right.
terms of, do the men describe it differently than we as women do? I bet they do.
I bet they do. I bet they do. Because you're talking about it more like, well, men tend to, they like to have action words. It's about the process, and women are more about the feeling, right? Like,
Yeah, it's about performance, it's about satisfaction. Did I satisfy her? Was she happy? Was she orgasmic? I mean, all of those things are really, really important to
mm-hmm.
men who care about
Mm-hmm.
their partner. They want to make sure that she had a pleasurable experience, and so they're very attentive to that. in a little bit different way than we as women. In some ways, I think it's easier for us. We attune to men. Men, they have to work a little harder to attune because they're not accustomed to that. And so for them, it's really important. They want to be attuned in that way.
So it would be great to know that and be able to express that to your partner, that it was amazing, that it was a cherished time, and you were satisfied, and that would mean a
Yep,
lot just to hear that, right? Or
absolutely.
I talk
Yeah.
about in my book about how you can you can say things or make sounds to express that pleasure, but it doesn't always come natural to a woman to let those sounds out. Or if you have a young family, those kids could hear you, and then you have a whole thing. So there's a lot of stages to a relationship, right? If you're together long enough, it's like it's almost like different relationships. Like you have to grow so much. And we've been married 22, well, no, 21 years. It's 21 years this spring. So, I can definitely demarcate stages in our relationship. Um, and I don't benchmarks or whatever you want to call them, where we had to sit down and say this isn't working anymore, and we need to adjust. And those soul talks where you could be like, whoa, this could be it, because I'm not okay with something, or I'm standing my ground, and what if he doesn't agree with me? How can we compromise, and where are we going to go from here? But it's a lot of growing pains, right? Like every relationship, you have to define and try to evolve, because we're always changing, right? Like you're always researching different things. I'm sure you've had a lot of growth in your life, and you've seen your patients or your family grow, and it's a really cool thing to look back. And then I would love to just share people just starting out, to give them a little insight in as to what happens in a relationship as time and growth happens. So it's very valuable to have these conversations, in my idea, my mind.
It is, and it's important because there are not venues where we really talk very often about these more personal, intimate experiences in our relationships. And you're absolutely right. It is a growth process, it's a change process. And, any number of elements in our life can impact what's going on in the bedroom. I mean, what's happening relationally, financially, with children, health issues, um, external relationships, extended family, anything can impact that experience, which is why it is so important that couples feel the freedom to talk openly about what is going on. And one of the greatest challenges that I see is very often that one partner sometimes will feel lonely and isolated and doesn't feel the freedom to tell the other because it all appears like it's okay, like they're performing sexually, and but there's this sense of disappointment or loss, and because it's not bad or it's not abusive or whatever, sometimes a partner will feel like, well, I can't really bring that up because everything's okay. And yet that can really limit the experience for the relationship sexually, but it can also impact the emotional connection in the relationship. And there are partners sometimes that just live quietly in that kind of disappointment. And it takes a toll. It really does take a toll.
It's because we weren't put here on earth to be okay. We are here to flourish. We're here to have joy and curiosity, and it goes to every single avenue of your life. If you if you suppress that growth and curiosity, you're not living your full soul. And that's that angst, that mundane, and it's easy to get numb in our world. I mean, look at how many states you can just go out and buy weed. Like I was in Michigan over the summer, every other corner you could just go buy full potency marijuana. I mean, these are things we need to consider, if we're busy dulling our senses. I know some people have experienced that it amplifies their senses, but they're not 100% in their body. I mean, that's what I'm getting to, is I'm not like naive about drug use, and some people it enhances their situations, but we have to look at how much we're trying to avoid versus be present. Because if you were taking some substance and it made you feel more present, that could be a positive, but it's all your intention, right? It's all your, are you just going through the motions? Because that's not living, right? That's existing. And we got to separate
Yes,
ourselves from existing to thriving.
yes, and that really is, again, about being attuned to our bodies. Some women find that if they, for example, have a glass or two of wine, they will relax more into the sexual experience. Well, that's a drug.
Mm-hmm.
But if a man drinks too much, he has difficulty performing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to understand that it's about being present in our own bodies and figuring out for us what is going to be useful in terms of our bodies being able to relax and enjoy the experience, and what is potentially going to dull or interfere with the pleasure. And that's something that's really important in terms of being attuned to what our bodies are telling us in terms of physiologically and with our nervous system. What is it that we really need to be able to relax? And part of what is so important, as you know, is that people really in the sexual experience need to be able to breathe deeply into that. They need to be able to just allow their body to relax and to be able to be present and receive. And part of that is being able to take in and to allow your body to participate in that experience in a way that is open and free.
That's beautifully said. That's beautifully said, because it can apply. There's so many different ways a person can apply that advice. I mean, to me, it might be, maybe you take a bath and your partner washes your hair. Maybe that feels really good. Or
Yeah.
maybe it's that you work out together and you get all sweaty, and you get your endorphins going, and you tell your spouse or your lover, like, how amazing their muscles look. I'm sure that a man would love to hear that, after working out, how buff he looks, but it's like taking that time to really see them, and making them a priority, and yourself a priority, because you're really listening to your body and what it needs. But you might be feeling you're indulgent, but it's not, because when you indulge what you need to feel present and to feel like that relaxation you're talking about, then your partner gets that too. And then if they share with you, you can respect what their relaxation, or their conquering, or whatever they need to, whatever a man needs, their cherished word. I can't wait to ask Mitch what his word would be. On my website, on my blog, you can make comments. Maybe this will be the most commented podcast.
Well, the feedback would be interesting.
Yeah, it would.
I look forward to that because I had never really thought about it in that way, in that framework. But yeah, I would like to, and I'm guessing there's probably some research somewhere that has looked at that in terms of how do men and women describe their sexual experience differently in terms of
Mm-hmm.
their values.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. It'll be an interesting conversation to be continued.
To be continued. Well, thank you so much, Susie. I really enjoyed this. I really did. And I can't wait to share it with the audience. And like you said, get those comments, and that'll be awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, was there anything else you wanted to share to close with today?
I guess if I were in the context of what we're talking about today, I would encourage anyone who is feeling stuck in their lives, and particularly if they are feeling dissatisfied or frustrated in their sexual relationship, to not hesitate to seek resources, information, support that you need, because ultimately we're all individually responsible for our own bodies and our own pleasure and our own sexuality. And if the quality of our life is not what we want it to be, then our responsibility is really to take action around that. And so I would encourage people to do what I call the next most simple step in that, whether it's looking up information, contacting a therapist, um, going to a store like locally we have stores like Fascinations that provide sexual resources for people. But to not be afraid of that exploration and to step forward and care for yourself in that way.
Lovely. I love that. It's so beautiful. Thanks again, Susie.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure and an honor to be here with you, Julie. Thank you so
Thank you. I
much.
feel the same. Take care. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to the next episode. As always, you can reach me at www.youneedapeptalk.com. Be well, my friends, and enjoy each day, as each moment is a chance to live the life of your dreams. Take care.